a lesson that Democrats should have learned. I mean, here's Trump in the White House. That's also a lesson that the president, who was the beneficiary of all this lawfare, should be learning himself. Like, who takes over now? The Trump administration is sending a lot of signals. They've sort of tamped down hopes that how full churches have been in the last week. So this has really had an impact on people, on their faith. It's led them to ask deeper questions about life, which ultimately is what Charlie wanted. But I think the other really important message she left us was to the question everyone's asking now, which is, how do you escape this cycle of political violence?
Welcome, Carine, to the Freedom Forge. We're so excited to have you. How have you enjoyed your weekend so far?
I've had a great time, and thanks for having me on. It's just been interesting conversation after interesting conversation. So really grateful to be here.
Yes, and I actually experienced firsthand today what it's like to be Carine, because multiple people came up to me asking me if I'm enjoying Boston and being a ski instructor, and I finally realized, oh my gosh, they think I'm Carine. But it seems like everyone loves you. So
well, I'm flattered that they think we're the same person.
Yes, and it was multiple people, but so Carine, I wanted to bring you on. Like, we heard some of your story at the Boston Globe, but I'm so interested in your backstory, in how you got interested in journalism, your upbringing as a conservative, despite living in blue Massachusetts. So can you start by telling us kind of what your life was like growing up as a child, your parents, where they come from, and yeah, please share.
Yeah, I grew up in a very culturally vibrant household, aka a very loud household. My family is Venezuelan and Lebanese. My dad's American. His grandparents immigrated from Lebanon. My mom's an immigrant from Venezuela. Her parents are from Lebanon.
Wow.
Two cultures that are very strong and also have a lot of strong conservative values. We were raised in the Melkite Church, which is sort of a Middle Eastern part of Catholicism.
Okay.
And so all of these, like, growing up in that community and growing up at my Melkite church and in the Melkite community, you just raised with these conservative values surrounding family and hard work, and personal responsibility. And so I think just that was the basic foundation of my viewpoints. But going through school and going through, especially college, I went to Harvard, which is obviously a very progressive university. I think that all really cemented or helped articulate some of my more political views. I had a couple of fantastic conservative professors, but also being surrounded by many progressives made me have to think really critically about what I believe. I'm not one to just go with the pack. So that was probably the biggest experience I had forming my views.
Yes, and I know that a lot of ELC members can relate going to these big universities and being one of the few conservative voices. It really sharpens your points of view. So how did your parents meet? I want to go all the way back. How did they meet? How did they end up in Boston? Is that where you grew up?
Yes, yeah, I grew up in Milton, just south of Boston.
Okay.
I went to an all-girls. I went to public school through middle school, and then went to an all-girls Catholic school in the Boston area. And my brother went to all-boys school. My sister went to all-girls school. Everyone in our family does this. So I was really lucky to also not only, grow up with my immediate family being conservative, but all my cousins, we all grew up in the same neighborhood together.
Wow.
And we all went to school together. So another really big part of my upbringing. And my parents met because of the Lebanese community. There are a lot of Lebanese people in Venezuela, and my grandparents on my dad's side had met my grandparents on my mom's side at a wedding in Venezuela years before my parents met. So when my mom came to Boston to do her LLM at BU, she ended up meeting my dad, and they fell in love and got married.
Wow. Okay. And I don't know if you already said this, but what brought your parents to Milton? Is that where they met?
My dad grew up in just the neighboring town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool.
My dad's a local. Yeah.
And what was life growing up for you in Catholic school? Were you, I don't know, was the faith a part of your life very young, or do you feel like it's something that you grew into?
Church was always sort of the central part of our week as a family, so was really raised in the faith, and I think that's been one of the most important thing in my life. And going to Roman Catholic school was also really fulfilling and getting to see different sides of Catholicism. Just academically, it was really interesting. I was educated by the Ursuline order, and have a lot of affection for the Ursuline sisters. In fact, the year after college, Harvard has these very generous traveling fellowships, and you sort of have to write an application about how you want to personally grow for a year. And mine was about, it was really hard for me to transition from Catholic school, which I loved, and I loved being in an all-woman space. It was like so empowering, and being in a faith-driven space, and then going to a very hyper-secular place. Now, Harvard has like a really vibrant Catholic center, and I made a lot of great friends, but it was just a really big life shock not to be constantly surrounded by the faith. So my application was about traveling to different convents to visit the Ursuline sisters around Europe. So that's what I did the year after college, actually. I just spent the whole year backpacking.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Harvard awarded you this fellowship to travel the world and visit these Catholic monasteries.
Yes.
So were you writing a paper, or what was kind of the outcome of this amazing year that you had?
Yeah, it actually comes with not many strings attached, this fellowship in particular.
Mhm.
But I proposed, my fellowship came, I proposed in my application doing a blog throughout.
Okay.
And so that's what I did. I did a travel blog, and I mean, the major theme was my own personal development and like spiritual development. But that style of writing is so fun. It's still on Substack. It's called Girl on the Loose, if anyone is interested in seeing all the mistakes I made along the way. But it was like a very freeing type of writing. Just all the people I met, all the places I went. Yeah.
Where did you go?
I went to 14 countries. I think I count Liechtenstein, my one day in Liechtenstein, in that count.
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah. But mostly Western and Central Europe.
Okay.
I did the Camino de Santiago for a month. So I started in France and I walked across Spain and did that pilgrimage. And this was right after sort of like things started opening up post-COVID. So I was one of the few Americans in Europe, period. So it was a really enlightening experience. Like, you really felt on your own for a lot of it, but that also deepened the relationships that I made with people along the way.
Okay, and the relationships that you made, were these people that you met traveling? Were these members of the churches? Yeah, tell us more about the impact that it had on you.
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, I wasn't always in convents. Sometimes I was in hostels and cities in between the different places I was going, and you meet other young travelers and you forge these like really deep friendships for just, there's like this silent understanding that you're really probably only ever going to see each other for these 2-3 days.
Yeah.
But the trust and like, it really, I think a lot of people are raised and validly so to be cautious and fearful of the broader world and also just strangers in general. And there's prudence to that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was really careful throughout my whole trip, but having to rely on other people and them having to rely on you in these situations, whether you're like walking in the middle of Spain and you're like 10 miles from your next stop, or you're in a hostel in Barcelona on your way to your next place, and you're lonely after a few days alone traveling, and you meet people and you all go to the museum together. Like, these were really deep experiences, and they didn't just sort of make me really hopeful about humanity generally, but they also made me very confident about my ability to take care of myself.
Wow. Okay. And spending that year abroad, what did you miss about America, and what do you want to bring home from the other cultures?
Yeah, I missed a lot of things. I missed my dog.
Yeah.
I really missed my dog, Rocky. That was probably number one.
What kind of dog?
He's a Jack
Rocky?
Russell Terrier.
Okay, we'll definitely insert a picture
Yeah,
of Rocky.
he's so cute. He's a menace. And I mean, obviously, like, going place to place, you miss the stability of like being with your family.
Yeah.
Like, you're constantly out of your comfort zone, and so you sort of miss like your mom making you dinner and
Oh, yeah.
like laying watching TV with your siblings. That, just like that feeling of comfort among family and friends too. But I think something that I learned basically everywhere I went was to be more outgoing. Like, throughout the entire experience, you will truly be lonely and sad and on your own if you don't go up to people and introduce yourself and the way that I learned to do that in like these new, obviously like you do that when you're at like these wonderful conferences and people are here to meet people. But when you're traveling alone and you're in hostels, everyone is sort of there to meet other people as well. But it's very difficult to go up and be like, hey, I'm Carine. I'm from America. I'm traveling to this place. Where are you going? Do you want to go to the museum today? It was very out of my comfort zone. And funny enough, it's a skill that I'm so glad that I learned from, my fellow travelers that year, because it's the basis of all my interviewing skills.
Oh, yeah,
It
that
really is,
makes
like,
sense.
You just like go on the campaign trail. I would just, whatever swing state you're in or wherever, you have to just go up to people when they're shopping or when they're, pushing their shopping carts back from the market or whatever. That's how you get really good interviews of actual real people and what they think.
Yes. Okay. And so this happened after Harvard, right? Right
Yes.
before you joined the Boston Globe, and is that the right timeline?
Before I joined the Journal, I did
The
my fellowship at the
Journal,
Journal.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's back up to right before when you were applying to Harvard.
Mhm.
How did you know what you were going to study? Why did you choose Harvard? And what was that like getting into Harvard and knowing you'd be close to home for college?
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I honestly didn't know much about Harvard at all. Like I said, I went to a Catholic school, and my peers usually went to other Catholic colleges, and I thought I would end up at like a BC or a Georgetown. But I had strong grades. I applied to Harvard. I thought, it's here. I have to. And so when I got in, it really was a total surprise. Like I was not really banking on it. And when you get in, you go, it's a tremendous opportunity. And it's one of the things I'm most grateful for. As critical as I've been of Harvard in my column, I am so grateful to have gone there. I've met the most important people in my life. I've met there. So yeah, I mean, it was a no-brainer.
Okay, yes, and it is amazing to go to Harvard. I recently did a deep dive in all the roots of Harvard and its founding, and it's amazing to be a part of that tradition. So, how did you get into journalism? I know that you were writing an opinion column for the Harvard Crimson, and you mentioned that you had some stories about being a conservative. So I want to learn about these stories and about the resiliency that came from having a different opinion at Harvard.
Yeah, my time at the Crimson was really, the column itself was really fulfilling. This was like sort of at the peak of protests in the 2021 era. People were really scared to really say anything in class. And the spring semester, I took a journalism seminar with Jill Abramson, who worked at the New York Times. And Jill is to the left of me. We don't have the same politics at all. But I mean, I just loved her course. And I remember one day she just sat there and looked at us and said, why aren't we arguing? This is a journalism class. Like we're dealing with like really controversial issues. And I was so grateful that she did that. And it's such a simple thing to say. But in a lot of other classes, you didn't feel like you had the permission to argue. And even if you did, there was just such a steep social cost to doing so. And in a lot of ways, that moment really inspired me to write the column my senior spring, knowing that I was leaving and really dismayed with how terrible the discourse culture was at Harvard. I mean, I think people, when they think about higher ed and what's going on, a lot of it seems to be in the classrooms, and people are self-censoring in the classrooms, and some of that happens, but the biggest cost is just the social cost. A lot of people had the same views that I did. A lot of people or were moderate or just didn't agree with the prevailing progressive orthodoxy. But people who fell on the progressive side of things ruled the narrative, could shout from the rooftops whatever they wanted, and you just had to go along. Yeah. The minute that I decided to speak up and say something, I was so pleasantly surprised by how many people quietly said, "Oh, we really agree."
Wow.
And honestly, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who face steeper social costs to doing so than I did. I mean, don't get me wrong, like it was extremely anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
And I have to shout out my best friend Amanda for reading every single column a million times before I submitted it, because I was scared. My first column was about how scared I was to write the rest of the column.
Wow.
Because things were that bad, and I didn't want to lose friends, and I didn't, you don't want to be socially isolated anywhere. But yeah, I got a lot of support. And I think that should be a hopeful message for other young conservatives on campus, that if you do speak out, odds are you're going to get more support than pushback.
That is amazing. We all need Amandas to help us, to push us in our lives. So thank you, Amanda, for
Yes.
helping Carine get to where she is. So has it gotten easier speaking out and writing about things that you know are controversial? Does it get easier?
Yeah, it does get easier. I mean, don't there are good days and bad days. And but I've also, like writing for a pretty liberal crowd, like Boston and the greater New England area leans to the left. Obviously, I have a lot of readers that don't agree with me. And you can get nasty comments. You can be the subject of Twitter mobs. All these things can happen. But what's the most rewarding to me is when I get, and this happens more often than people ever assume, but I'll get emails from somebody to the left of me, or even, like a progressive saying, thank you. I had never realized that, people thought this way, or this is why somebody has that policy, or this happened a lot on the campaign trail, particularly. I covered Trump voters starting in New Hampshire and the New Hampshire primary onward. It was a long road. And my goal was to help. I realized that there were a lot of readers who leaned to the left that were not familiar with why Trump voters were so frustrated.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it really wasn't about whether I agreed with some of the policies or not. And I've been critical, I've been supportive, just depending policy to policy. But what was most important to me was that Americans understand each other, because I was just seeing the gap between Americans grow wider and wider. And there were valid frustrations to be had. So it was so rewarding the day after the election, having not slept for like a week straight and getting an email from a Democrat saying, thank you for explaining this. I wasn't blindsided, and I understand a little why this happened. And that made it all the sleepless nights worth it.
Yes, that is amazing to know that you are having that impact and really helping this polarization of America for the people that want to understand the other side. So when you finished your fellowship, you started working at the Wall Street Journal. How did that job come about? And tell us about your time there.
Yeah, so I up to this point, opinion journalism was like my favorite hobby, and I had a consulting offer at the end of when I was traveling, and something kept nagging at me, and I just knew it wasn't the right thing. And a dear mentor, I was at a think tank event, and he showed me this Rago Fellowship. It's through the Fund for American Studies, the Joseph Rago Memorial Fellowship on the Wall Street Journal Editorial Board. And it's 9 months, and you get to work with the op-ed team there. You get to sit in on editorial meetings. And it was like a light bulb went off, and I felt like, okay, that's what I'm meant to do. That's what I want to do. And actually, I was in Steamboat when I applied. I had a brief pause in my travels. That's when I was a ski instructor at Steamboat.
Okay.
And I had just torn my ACL, so I was on ice, tracking all the little kids who have their little trackers on the bunny hill, and had that application open and said, this is what I have to do. I know it just felt right. So I applied, I got the fellowship, and after my year of travel, recovery, and then travel had wrapped up, moved to New York and started that fellowship.
Okay, wow. And what about getting to your next job at the Boston Globe?
Yeah, once the 9 months were up on the fellowship, I was looking around at various options, and I applied to the Globe and was offered the job, and it just was such a juicy opportunity, and I thought back to my time at the Crimson and how much I enjoyed writing for a liberal audience.
Wow.
And so it sort of was a no-brainer at that point. Yeah.
And how long have you been there?
2 years
At
this month.
point? Okay.
Yeah.
And have you changed and grown in your philosophy of writing and opinion journalism since 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think I always tell this to kids in college who reach out, like, do more reporting than you even think you have to, because I have like my values and I have my base beliefs, but you always want to be honing. You don't want to take anything for granted. And I want people to try to prove me wrong. Like I want to sharpen my views. So that's why I spend so much time reporting. And I love being out on, the campaign trail or at different events and just like being there and talking to people in person because I've changed my mind on a lot of things. The immigration issue in Massachusetts is so nuanced and a lot of it comes down to these like tricky policies and nobody wants to budge on them. And so realizing that it's not necessarily like this black and white issue and it really does come down to these complex policies. That's just one example of a place that I haven't like fully changed my mind on what I think about immigration broadly, but on these little things, like because I did the reporting and because I took the time to listen to different sides of arguments, you sort of like form a new opinion.
Okay. And how about Steamboat? How did you get introduced to the Tony Blankley Fellowship? What was the application process like and finding out that you had won?
Yeah, so actually the first time I had heard about the fellowship was from Jillian Melchior when I was a fellow at the Journal, and I was thinking about next steps, and she was so generous with her time. And I remember we had like a Zoom call, and she said, "You should keep an eye on this. Like it's a really great. I did it. It's been a great opportunity." So it was always on my radar. And then a couple other friends sort of reminded me about it in the last year. And so I thought like now is a great time to apply to this program. All the fellows are doing such amazing things and I would just be honored to be a part of that. The interview was really fun. I mean, same as the conference now, the conversations I've had, like Steamboat supporters really want to challenge their own views. And I think that's something that's really special and rare. They're here to learn and they're open to changing their minds. And I felt that way in the interview too. Like we had such an interesting conversation. So I was just thrilled when they offered me the fellowship and to be a part of this community.
Yes, and I could hear the excitement in the room when you were giving your remarks and talking about how much you value free speech with your family's background. And so it's amazing to have you. You've had so many mentors that have shaped your life, and Amanda, your friend, that have had these impacts on you. And we're excited to have you as part of Steamboat, both to give you the support in your next step and also to learn from you as part of the Emerging Leaders Council. What is one piece of advice that you have for young people that want to follow a similar path that you have?
This is advice that I got on an internship at National Review, and I've heard this advice in many different wonderful conservative outlets that I've worked at or have friends at, which is when you're in your 20s, and this sounds harsh, but nobody cares what you think.
No.
So they don't necessarily mean that literally, but it means that you have to work for people to care what you think. Like I'm not an established columnist. I'm very new to this job. So I have to get out and report and bring new information to the table to be able to prove my point. And that's so important because, I want my readers, I have my beliefs, but I want my readers to trust what I'm saying and that I have credibility in what I'm saying. And it does work. Reporting, even if you're in opinion, especially, I think it brings just like this extra layer to what you do.
You're definitely building an amazing reputation here at Steamboat.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you and welcome to the family.
Appreciate it. I'm so glad to be a part of the Steamboat family.